Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll show you how I painted the Harvester from core space to a tabletop ready standard with contrast paints. Here's our Harvester all ready to go, and we're going for a nice simple paint recipe here. It's going to be tabletop ready, mostly contrast paints, and I'll show you how I did it almost in real time, so really quick to get this painted. He was based with the Citadel colour Wraithbone paint, and you can use the spray, but I just used the pot. And here's all the paints that we're going to use in this video. So a nice selection of base paints, the Null Oils, contrast paints, a few technical paints, and also some base paints from Vallejo. And so we're going to use different brushes, but I can certainly recommend the Wargamer character brush. It's a great all-round brush, but I've been using the Kalinsky No. 2 lately. Right, here we go. Let's get straight into it then with the Null Oil. And I want to give these guys a grungy look. I don't want them to be pristine looking. I don't want them to be metallic either. And so I want this kind of like battle hardened, almost like they've been in battle and they're covered in some kind of grunge and laser dust, whatever that could be. And so they're traveling through space causing trouble. So these guys have seen some action, and so I want to get that across in this effect. And so I'm going over it all with a coat of Null Oil, being quite generous, but really trying to start and end my brush strokes in all those crevices there, trying to get most of that kind of dark area filled with this nice shade, and that's going to give us some nice colour and contrast later on. But with these models, they're quite smooth, so there's a lot of smooth flat areas, which isn't great for the contrast paints. So I thought doing this style might be a good way to kind of work with that, but also give it a real grungy, spaced look. So the next paint is the contrast black Templar. So as soon as that Null Oil is completely dry, I go over all the areas that I want to be black with this black Templar. And I'm being careful here not to put too much paint on my brush. I think the kind of temptation with the contrast paints is to put loads of paint on and spread it around. But we don't want to go crazy here. We want to get enough so that the areas with the recesses and the deep areas where you'll get more shadow, we want more paint to build up there. So it's the same idea of starting and ending the brush stroke where you want most of the paint to finish. Also use the texture of the model to wipe that paint off the brush, and then you've got plenty of time to push and pull it around, making sure that paint sits exactly where you want it. And then when you've got it in the place where you want it to be, just leave it, let it dry, and then let that contrast paint do its job, and that's going to dry really nicely, give you some areas that are a bit lighter but darker in the recesses. So it's just getting a little balance really with how much you put on your brush and how much you apply in the different sections of the model. So on the larger flatter areas you don't want too much paint, but in those recesses you want a lot. So it's just getting that balance right and not loading your brush up too much. I'm using the Kalinsky synthetic No. 2 size here because it holds a bit more paint, and so that can help. But the Wargamer brush is going to be just as good for this, no problem at all. So just making sure we get right in those little gaps now, and this is tabletop ready, so I'm trying to be quite quick to get this done in the technique, but I'm also being as neat as I can. So I really want to give this a neat finish, but still tabletop ready. So it's not gonna be perfect, but it's important to make sure I don't go over the lines with the colours. But if I do, I can quickly clean that up anyway by using a little bit of Wraithbone and then putting another Null wash over that, and then that will cover up any mistakes we've made, no problem. But here we go now. I'm just going in this little area of the neck and just applying some of that black Templar, making sure I'm really looking at the model, turning it all the time, making it easy for myself. So rather than moving myself and the brush, I'm trying to move that model as much as possible so that I've got a nice firm grip, I'm nice and balanced, my hand's not shaking too much, and I kind of rest my arms on the table, so that gives me a lot more control as well. And then I'm just taking my time, picking out those areas, trying to look for those defined lines where the different materials of the robot or of the Harvester are gonna meet, and then make sure I'm as neat as I can as I fill that black area in. So this is a really nice and easy stage, but again, take your time and do it as neat as you can. Right, now we've done that, we're going to move on to the contrast Aggaros dunes. And so I was thinking about using skeleton horde or snakebite leather, but I thought this Aggaros dunes would be good over this Null Oil because it will give us a kind of almost gold look, but it's not going to come out metallic at all, and that Null Oil is really going to grunge it up and bring the kind of brightness of it down. So this is a great paint to use over a metallic paint. So if you ever use like a lead belcher base and then put this Aggaros dunes over the top, you can get a really nice metallic gold effect. But going over this Null now, I was really pleased with how this worked out. I don't want it to be like glossy at all. I want a nice almost matte finish. These are kind of strange robots. They're not like typical made of metal or anything like that. So I want that matte effect to really come through here with it. And I think this Aggaros Dunes is a great colour and it worked really well. So I'm just checking the model again, making sure I've got all the sections right. Adding a little bit more paint to my brush for those larger sections. And then again, just pushing and pulling that paint around, making sure it goes where I want it to go. And again, we can let this go in the little gaps by the black, but we don't want to go over the black too much because it will show up a little bit. So just being careful again and just pushing it, guiding it where you want it to go. And then if a little bit goes in like the shadow area, that's okay, because that's what these contrast paints are really good for. They'll leave you a nice shadow, so you get a little cheeky bonus from this going in all those little gaps as well. So even on the arms you can see there's where that Null Oil has got in, we've got a nice dark shadow. So if we go over that with this contrast paint, that's going to work no problem. And then just on the face, I don't want too much on here, so I haven't got as much paint on my brush as I did for the larger sections of the body. And so I'm just making sure it's got one nice even coat all over. I don't want the eye sockets too full here because we're going to paint those later on with a white paint and then some red. So just being careful that they don't fill in too much. But if you ever paint skulls or anything like that, these contrast paints, use a skeleton horde, are perfect for that. And you can really flood those crevices with paint. But for this, because we're going to be going over it with the white later on, I don't want to do that. So I'm just being extra careful there. And if you do put too much paint on, you can just take your brush, put it on some kitchen towel so that it wicks away the paint from the brush, and then just use your brush to suck that paint back up off the model, and then you won't have so much paint on there. So that works really well. But here I'm just finishing off on the legs now, again moving that model as much as possible so that my brush is almost in the same place and I've got lots of control. And so we're nearly finished now on this stage, so you can see how quick this is. I mean, this is pretty much real time, so I thought it would be cool just to let the video go so you can see exactly how long it takes. We've only got 5 harvesters to paint, so what I did is I painted them all as a batch but only recorded one of them, so the poses are different but the painting technique's exactly the same. And so for the other models, when we move on to the Assassin and the Devastator, we'll use some different paints for that. Right, but now we're going to get some white 0.951 Vallejo, and I've got this just wet down with a tiny bit of water, and I've got my brush with a nice amount of paint on there, and I go in really carefully, just painting a little dot there. And then for the eyes, I want to just do a tiny dot. We're going to go over this in red, but I want that red to stand out a bit, so I think a little bit of white really helps that. So I'm just being really careful, a bit nervous at this stage. I want to get this just right, and so I'm being really like tentative going in there. I'm not rushing it, making sure that I've got my hands on the table and that nothing is shaking much, and then just a little dot, and then just check them to see that they're as symmetrical as we can. And I'll just tidy that one up a little bit with a little bit more white paint on there, but being really careful here. Okay, once that white's completely dried, we're going to take this Nihilakh Oxide technical paint, and this stuff's great, and I'm going to put a nice blob of that over the white there, and this is really going to look like it's glowing and give that kind of effect. And this is quite a chalky paint, so that's how we can get that glowing effect. Then we'll take some technical Blood for the Blood God. This is a glossy paint, and this is going to be perfect for those eyes. So just a little dot on each eye, and again moving that model so it's where it's easier for me to get my brush there. One nice dot of that, that's all we need. And so I don't want to put too much on there, really being careful to make it neat. Then we're going to take some 0.989 Sky Grey Vallejo and give a nice coat all over the base, and then just give it a nice even. You might need 2 coats, but this is quite good coverage from the Vallejo paints, so I find often 1 coat's enough. But if you've got a lot of dark paints underneath like we have here, then you may need 2. So that's up to you, but I would say do 2 and thin it down a little bit. Then I take some blue tack, pop that on the end of my dry brush, and then that holds the model in place, and then we get a little turntable that helps us paint the rim then. So there we go, we can just turn that now, and then as we apply that paint, that grey paint, we can turn the model, and that's going to go on really easily. We've got loads of control, and we can really take our time to make this really neat. And then just again keeping the brush in the same place, I'm just turning that model, and I want to keep this nice and simple, the base, so it works with these fantastic battle mats. And here we go, here's our harvester all painted, these tabletop ready, and all with mostly contrast paints, really quick and easy. And I think we get a really nice grungy effect, and using that Null Oil with the contrast over the top really plays into that idea. And I was really happy with how he turned out, and I think that he's going to look really great against all the battle mat and the awesome terrain pieces that come with the core space set. I think there's a few ways you could go with this. If you wanted it metallic, I would say all the areas we painted with that Aggaros Dunes, maybe do a base layer of lead belcher and then go over it with Aggaros Dunes, and then you get a really shiny robot, much like our C3PO. It would look a lot like that. But you could also not do the Null Oil stage and just go straight on with an Aggaros Dunes, and then you get a matte finish, which would be a lot cleaner looking, a lot more neat and tidy. But I really like this grungy look, and when you've got them all lined up, they really look quite menacing, and they look like they've seen some battle damage over the years that they've been in action. So that, I really like that idea for my purge. I want them to be all grungy, and I've kind of gone with that for all the different models too. The assassin's a little bit cleaner because we didn't really use the contrast paints on him, or her, so I guess that's going to be like standing out a little bit more. But those Devastators, I find this really worked nicely and painted them orange. But you'll be able to see videos for all of these, so you can see how I painted the assassin here, and that's mostly with just a few paints. This was probably the easiest one, the live one, just 6 paints all together to get this guy ready. And then we've got these awesome Devastators, and I did one in orange and one in red, and so you'll have a little idea of how different the two colours will work. But what I'll do is I'll put links in the description to all the paints used in this video, and so you'll be able to find those there, and that's the recipe if you wanted to copy it. And those links will be affiliate links to Element Games, but they won't cost you anything extra. In fact, you can save up to 20% there on all your game products, and for every sale made through an affiliate link, I get a small commission, and that's going to help me do loads more videos like this, develop the channel, and I really appreciate that support. So thanks so much for the support in the channel, it's awesome. If you like this kind of content and would like to support the channel, then please check out my Patreon page, and thanks to everyone who's joined so far. It's really awesome. We hang out on Discord, talk about the hobby, share ideas and help each other out, and you'll get some perks there that you're not going to find anywhere else. So I'll put a link in the description, and it'll be great to see you there. I hope you enjoyed the video and this gave you an idea how you can get your miniatures ready really quickly to a tabletop ready standard with contrast paints. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below. I always love reading the comments, so please join in if you'd like to, that'd be amazing. But thanks so much for watching. Please like if you like it, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to join me next time on Tabletop Skirmish Games.